Look, we have all been there, right? You've got this absolutely brilliant strategy, it looks perfect on paper, but when it hits the real world, it just kind of falls apart. Whether you're running a company, teaching a class, or honestly just trying to hit a massive personal goal, there is this incredibly frustrating gap between making a plan and actually pulling it off. Well, in this explainer, we are going to completely unpack the blueprint for bridging that exact gap. Consider this your ultimate survival guide, the 4DX framework. To put the scale of this problem into perspective, get this. Every single year, organizations dump a staggering $30 billion, yeah, billion with a D, on strategy creation alone. I mean, just think about that for a second. That is a colossal amount of time, energy, and resources poured into fancy offsite meetings, endless slide decks, and these grand visions of the future. The pressure on leaders to actually execute these things and drive growth is just unrelenting. But here is the kicker, and it's a shocking one. Over 80% of those incredibly expensive strategies completely fail. No way around it, they just flop. It leaves us all wondering, why does all that effort just go down the drain? Well, research shows us that executing a strategy that demands a real lasting change in human behavior is literally one of the hardest leadership challenges out there. The stuff you can fix with a quick signature, like approving a budget or buying new software, that only takes you so far. The real beast is trying to change how people act day in and day out. Enter the real monster of our story, the whirlwind. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's those urgent, noisy, day-to-day operational tasks that just eat up all our time and energy, constantly blowing our big picture goals right off the radar. You might have heard of Parkinson's law, right? The idea that work just naturally expands to fill the time you give it. Well, nowhere is that more painfully true than with your whirlwind. It will ruthlessly consume every spare minute and every ounce of your energy, suffocating your actual long-term strategy. So, and this is absolutely crucial to understand, the 4 disciplines of execution isn't about somehow magicking that whirlwind away. The whirlwind is your day job. It is not going anywhere. Instead, 40X is a concrete set of rules for executing your strategy right smack in the middle of it. Think of 40X like the core operating system on your computer. You need a rock-solid OS to run whatever cool strategic programs you want to install. If your operating system is buggy or weak, well, your programs are inevitably going to crash. All right, let's get into the actual disciplines. Discipline 1 is focus on the wildly important. Now, I'll warn you, this requires you to go entirely against your basic wiring as a leader. Why? Because we naturally want to do it all. But trying to do everything means you end up accomplishing absolutely nothing. It is a harsh reality. When organizations try to tackle way too much at once, they just spread themselves incredibly thin, and you get this massive dilution of effort where nothing that actually matters gets across the finish line. To defeat that, you've got to narrow your focus down to a maximum of just 1 or 2 wildly important goals. We call these WIGs. And here's the rule. You absolutely must define them with crystal clarity. You need a starting point, a target, and a hard deadline. The formula is simply from X to Y by when. So, for instance, taking a school's reading proficiency from 60% up to 80% by May. Boom, clear. Also keep in mind, these goals really should bubble up from the bottom. Senior leadership can veto them, sure, but they shouldn't just dictate them from on high. Moving right along to Discipline 2, which is all about acting on the lead measures to create, honestly, massive leverage. This is where the real magic happens. Look, most leaders are incredibly well-trained at obsessing over outcomes. We all do it. But learning to act on lead measures, that is the little-known secret weapon of flawless execution. So here is the counterintuitive part. You have to stop obsessing over dead outcomes. Things like revenue, test scores, or weight loss. Those are what we call lag measures. Think about it. By the time you actually measure them, the result is already history. It's in the past. You can't change it. Instead, you've got to start tracking predictive, influenceable actions. Take weight loss, for example. The weight on the scale is the lag measure. But your lead measures, those are the hours you spend exercising and the specific calories you consume. You have direct control over those every single day. These lead measures, they act like a heavy lever. By throwing intense, focused energy at these specific actions, you predictably force the ultimate goal forward. You're basically leveraging the 80-20 rule here, focusing all your fire on the 20% of activities that actually drive 80% of your results. Now, fair warning, lead measure data is usually way harder to track than just checking revenue at the end of the month. But you have to pay the price to track it. It's absolutely non-negotiable because it is the only thing that directly connects your frontline team's daily grind to the overall victory. Which naturally brings us to discipline 3, the discipline of engagement, keeping a compelling scoreboard. At the end of the day, the highest level of human performance always comes from people who are emotionally engaged in what they are doing. And the fastest way to get that emotional engagement? Knowing the score. If you don't have a highly visible scoreboard, your wildly important goal is going to just vanish into the chaotic noise of the whirlwind in a matter of days. For sure. It's simple human psychology, really. If your team cannot instantly look up and answer whether they are winning or losing at a mere glance, their engagement is naturally going to plummet. They aren't really in the game anymore, they're just clocking in and doing chores. You absolutely have to ditch those complicated, unreadable corporate spreadsheets and replace them with something instantly obvious. To keep that momentum going, your scoreboard needs to follow 4 rules. It has to be dead simple, it must be highly visible to everyone on the team, it has to show both those lead and lag measures we talked about, and it must tell you if you are winning in 5 seconds or less. Oh, and here is a massive pro tip right from the framework. 4DX heavily recommends letting the teams design these scoreboards themselves. Don't just hand it down from management. When they build it, they own it, and that creates profound engagement. And finally, we arrive at discipline 4. This right here is where the actual execution happens, creating a strict weekly cadence of accountability. Think about it. The first 3 disciplines, they just set up the rules of the game. But until you enforce discipline 4, your team isn't actually out on the field playing. Without consistent, relentless accountability, even your very best goals are going to disintegrate into the daily chaos of the whirlwind. So what does this look like? It boils down to a fast 20 to 30-minute weekly huddle, the WIG session, and it's highly structured. Everyone accounts for the commitments they made last week, you look at the scoreboard together, and then everyone commits to new actions for the upcoming week. That's it. You highlight the wins, you analyze the misses without pointing fingers or blaming people, and you course correct. Over time, this becomes the ultimate self-sustaining performance management engine. During this weekly rhythm, there is one critical question every single team member has to ask themselves. What are the 1 or 2 most important things I can do this week to impact the lead measures? Notice how specific that is. It's not about trying to magically move the lag measure. The focus is entirely on committing to actions that move the predictive lead measures. You are essentially making a tangible bet every single week on your own behavior. Now, a quick reality check. Adopting 40X is absolutely a long-term journey. You are going to move through 5 distinct stages. You start with just getting clear on your goals. Then, you have a high-energy launch, which requires a ton of leadership involvement. After that, you push through the adoption phase, where all that initial resistance starts to fade. Then you hit optimization, where the team is actually looking for ways to improve the process. And finally, you arrive at permanent habits. That's when you've truly built a lasting culture of excellent execution. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a rather provocative question. What is your daily whirlwind currently costing you? And more importantly, are you ready to fight back? Because the 40X framework isn't just some theoretical experiment, it is a proven practice. If you focus on the wildly important, act on those lead measures, keep a highly visible scoreboard, and fiercely protect that weekly cadence of accountability, you can finally bridge that agonizing gap between your biggest, boldest strategies and real, undeniable execution.